I will be looking at the basics of SPSS. Now, the first question is, what is SPSS? A lot of us today, when we write our methodology section, we still put something like, we have used the statistical packages for social sciences. That used to be correct, but as of 2009, when IBM bought over statistics, bought SPSS as a franchise, that name does not apply to SPSS any longer. So it would be of good practice for us to stop putting that. I used statistical packages for social sciences software. The name is now referred to as IBM SPSS Statistics. And it's been like that since 2009. Because now SPSS is no longer exclusively for social sciences. It's able to do a bit more than that. So that's very important, actually. I just feel I should bring that to our notice. For those of us writing thesis, don't put SPSS together. Why do we want to use SPSS? Among all the, let me use the word, non-programming statistical packages available, SPSS trumps them all because it has arguably the best user interface. It has a very good data handling capability, and it's very suitable for the non-technical user. And by that, I mean those who need statistical analysis at the beginning to intermediate levels. Now, the downsides are, now one thing about SPSS is that because of the user-friendly interface, it's easy to click and generate anything you want. So the tendency to generate many outputs, and then you end up having a lot of tables and chart and this, and that might look cumbersome to the average user, and being able to pick out the relevant one requires a relatively good statistical knowledge. Now, another thing is that, as I mentioned earlier, SPSS is likely more suitable for those who are not diving very deeply into statistical analysis, the social scientists, and so on and so forth. It's good for them. But when you would require like very robust analytic tests, the remedy to that is for you to use SPSS in conjunction with other advanced tools like Python and R. And the producers of this software, knowing that this limitation exists, have actually been able to provide what they call plugins, where you can actually plug in your Python and R in order to do more advanced analysis that you don't have in the SPSS interface. Now, the first thing we want to talk about now is the SPSS GUI. By GUI, I mean the graphic user interface. Graphic user interface. So I'm going to launch my SPSS now so that we can all have a look at what this is. Why is this thing here? Let me start from the beginning. Let me close this. Let me close this. Let me assume I want to launch my SPSS from the beginning. So I'll request that we all launch our SPSS. So if I put on my SPSS, I'm going to have something like this. It's loading. It's going to take a while. Irrespective of the version you're using, you're going to have a similar interface. So you wait for it to load. When this window pops up, you don't need it. So you can just close this very window. My meeting is obstructing my... Hold on a second, please. The Zoom app is actually obstructing the top of my screen, so I'm not able to click what I want to click. Hold on a second, let me sort that. Okay, let me move it down. Yeah, I think this is better. So now when you launch your SPSS, you're going to have something like this, but you actually don't need this screen, so you can just close it. I see. So you can actually just close this like this. So can you see my screen? Hello, everyone. Can you see my screen, please?
Yes, please. Yes.
Yeah.
Yes,
Okay.
please.
Okay.
Yeah, very
So
much.
when you launch your SPSS, you're going to have this view. And below here, you'll see what we call the data view and the variable view. Data view, variable view. Data view, variable view. These two views are actually very, very important. And if you're able to comprehend how it works, then you don't have a problem using SPSS, because the most important thing in SPSS is for you to actually capture your data accurately. You don't need any technical knowledge to run the analysis. It's just click and play, like the way you type on your phone. So I'm going back to the slides. So back to the slides, the variable view, which I showed us right now, is actually where we define and modify the characteristics of our variables, such as the name of the data or the variable, the type, the weight, and the labels. We'll be taking a look at that very soon, so don't worry. Now, there are some naming conventions when it comes to naming variables in SPSS. Number one, when you're naming a variable in SPSS, spaces are not allowed. For instance, if I went back to my screen, let me see if I can split this into two, like this, and then I launch the SPSS alongside, and I close this like this also. I'm assuming we can see both my SPSS and the PPT. If we can, then very good. Now, what we're going to be looking at is this.
Yeah, both are visible.
We cannot see
Okay.
the writing clearly.
It's okay. I'll explain. Don't worry about that. Okay. I'll explain.
Okay.
So now what I was talking about is I want to name variables. And for us to name variables in SPSS, we activate the variable view. And for us to do that, all we have to do is to click on it. So if you can see my SPSS, we have data view first, variable view first. So you click on the variable view, it will be highlighted in blue. I don't know the color that yours is indicating. So if you got that, then it means you are in the variable view. Now, this is where we name our variables. So we're going to enter some data, a hypothetical data set we're going to be practicing with today. Let's assume I want to name a variable named gender. You can just click in it. It's very easy. Just click on the first column where you have the name indicator, name. Let's say you want to put gender. You type in gender. You just enter it. Very easy to enter data in SPSS. Now, spaces. Let's assume I want to enter a gender called level of education on the second row, and I say level of, there's a space, education. If I enter that, it's not going to be possible. Variable name contains an illegal character. Why? Because I have spaced the name. So SPSS does not allow this. But I'll show you how you can indicate the description of your variable very soon. So if I click OK, and then I cancel this and I go back to this place. If I really want to ensure that I capture that data as level of education, which I don't think it's necessary at this stage, I can do it like this: level underscore OF. That's if it's a must, I need to represent this variable with this name. Level of education. Like this. We can see it accepted this, right? Because there was no space. The underscore actually serves as a mitigating factor of restraining us from entering with space. So, but I felt this is too long, so I'm just going to put this as education. Just watch. Education. Then I enter it. Now, why have I decided not to put level of education? I'll show you very soon. That is because if you go along the columns, you have name, type, weight, decimals, label. Now, under the label, This is where you can describe the name of your variable. For instance, the first one is gender. I want to call this gender gender of respondent. Gender of respondent, like this. So that describes what gender is here. Now, education, I want to describe it as what? Level of what? Education. So that was why I said that it's not necessary for us to describe the name here, because you have a column, name label, where you can actually describe the name of the variable. So here I'm able to actually tell what I'm describing here by saying level of education. So we are still looking at the naming conventions in the variable view of SPSS. Now, each variable name must be unique, meaning you can't use gender here and gender here. So they must not be identical. Now, your variable name cannot be longer than 64 characters. Your variable name cannot be longer than 64 characters. And I think that's very easy enough. So that is the first part with the naming conventions. We'll come back to this later. For now, I'm going to open my PPT for us to continue. I'm going to open my PPT. Why can't I have this? Okay. Yeah, so if we are here, you can see my PPT clearly. So we've actually touched on this, no spaces, we can use underscores. And okay, another thing we can't do is that we can't start a variable name with a number or special character. What that means is this. Imagine I want to put a variable here and I decide to put 1 as a variable name. If I entered, it's going to tell me illegal first character. So you cannot start the naming of a variable using either a number or a special character. By a special character, we mean something like, let me say, at. Something like at. Oh, it's actually, okay, you can actually use some special characters. Can't start with number or special character. You can actually use some special characters. Sorry, I made a mistake in that slide. But you can't use numbers, but you can use special characters. So it's actually, you can use special characters, but not numbers. My error in this slide. Okay. Now, the next thing now is we want to look at the data view. We'll consider that later. But before then, before we actually enter data and look at what the data view tells us, the data view simply shows us the data we've captured using SPSS. We'll come back to that later. The most important thing in SPSS is measurement scales. If you don't indicate the measurement scales appropriately, then you can't run the relevant analysis. Because when you assign the wrong measurement scale to the wrong data type, then you'll be restricted on the type of analysis you can run. So probably this is a very, very important section of this whole training. So I would like us to pay very good attention to this. Now, any statistics book will tell you that we have 4 measurement scales: the nominal, the ordinal, the interval, and the ratio. The nominal, the ordinal, the interval, and the ratio. Please let us try and understand this very well, because it is very important. Now, when you say nominal scale, what does that mean? Now, nominal scale simply refers to the grouping or categorization. Males and females, colors, white, blue, black, green, yellow, marital status, single, married, divorce, gender. Of course, in the gender, you can see I added male, female, and we live in 2024, so there are people who report to have other genders. So when you're designing your questionnaire, it is not a good practice to add others. So nominal refers to the categorization of our what? Quantities, as clearly explained. The next one is ordinal. From the word order, there is a grouping with meaningful order. There's a hierarchy. Take, for instance, level of education. Conventionally, someone with a bachelor's degree is considered to be academically higher than someone with a high school diploma. And someone with a master's degree is considered to be academically higher than someone with a bachelor's degree or a high school diploma. So that is why we say ordinal is for what? Ranking. There is a meaningful order. There is a meaningful hierarchy. Now, a very important part of this ordinal scale of measurement is what we call the Likert scale. Now, most times when we design our questionnaires, we use these psychometric scales. Can you indicate your level of agreement or disagreement to the following indicators? Strongly agree, disagree, neutral, and so on and so forth. So, Likert scale, which could either be 3, 5, 7-point Likert scale, falls under ordinal scale of measurement. So when you're capturing your Likert scale responses, please make sure to indicate that your measurement scale, which I'll show you in SPSS now, is actually an ordinal level of measurement. So we also look at something like socioeconomic status, like low income, middle income, and high income. So we've covered two types of measurement scales: the nominal, which only has to do with categorization and grouping, and then the ordinal, which actually gives us a meaningful order or hierarchy of measurement. Now, the remaining two are what we call the interval scale and the ratio scale. Now, when you say interval, the interval scale actually have other categories with equal intervals between them. I'll explain this better. They do not have a true 0 point, meaning 0 does not indicate the absence of the measured quantity, but rather a point on the scale. Take, for instance, we all went through the winter. Whenever the temperature is 0 degrees Celsius, does it mean that there is no temperature? No, we still feel the temperature. So 0 in interval does not indicate that there is no measurement or there is an absence of the quantity being measured. It's simply just a point on the scale. Take, for instance, another one, IQ scores. This is repeated. You cannot say because someone was tested and the person has 0 IQ, it means the person is completely senseless. Is that possible? No. There will always be a form of intelligence in someone, irrespective of how low the IQ is perceived to be. So the interval scale has no meaningful 0 or has no what we call true 0. Now, the last scale of measurement is what we call the ratio scale. Now, the ratio scale actually exhibits all the attributes of the interval scale, but in this instance, there is actually a true 0 point. And when we say there is 0 in ratio scale, it actually reflects the absence of the quantity being measured. Okay, let's take a very common example, money. It is possible to have 0 money. If you don't have money, you don't have money. 0 means no money. So that is true. Kilogram, that is weight. You can have 0 weight. So that's measured on ratio scale. But the good thing for us in SPS is that we don't have to bother so much about, is this one interval, is this one ratio? No, we don't have to bother ourselves with that, because SPSS actually groups both interval scale and ratio scale to be scale. So when we go back to the SPSS software, you're going to see that we don't have anything like interval, we don't have anything like ratio. SPSS combines both of them to be what? Scale. And usually scale variables are quantitative variables or continuous variables, usually. Quantitative and continuous. And usually our ordinal and nominal variables fall under, usually they fall under qualitative variables. So this is just the brief introduction to SPSS, and I think this is all we need at this stage. So what we're going to be doing now is I will input some data point, then we look at how we do all these measurement scale setting, and then we proceed to running some very descriptive analysis. So, practical section 1, manually entering data in SPSS. Now, in this world of technology, we now capture our data using websites like Qualtrics and Co. So we have our data in electronic forms in spreadsheet. So that we'll cover that under importing data. But then the traditional way, before the advent of online data collection, we do what we call manual entry. And that's how we are going to start this training, so that we'll have a very good grasp of how things work in SPSS. So I'm going to start with the manual one. So I'm going to launch the SPSS software again. And I would like all of us to open our SPSS and input the same data points I'm going to be inputting manually, so that we can set the scales and data labels and width and everything together. Please, have we all launched our SPSS? Hello?
Yeah.
Yes,
We are
teacher.
ready.
Yes.
Okay, once our SPSS is on, and you can see my own screen, now there's something missing here. Now, before you start entering data, you know, in your questionnaire, you always say something like confidentiality of the respondent is assured, meaning you don't even know the respondent. So what we normally do is to assign a hypothetical number. We call it the ID or serial number. So assuming I've entered this already, but I forgot to enter the ID or the serial number of the respondent, you can go to the first row, right-click on it like this. When you right-click on it, you see copy, paste, clear, but you see insert variable. So I'm going to insert one variable, which goes to the top. Automatically, SPSS names it variable, wherever. But I want to name this my ID, respondent ID, or some people call it either ID or SN. Whichever one is okay with you, they are the same, serial number or ID. It's a hypothetical labeling for the respondent. So when I do that, I have the first row being ID, then the type is numeric. Now, if you click on this numeric, please click on it. You'll see 3 dots there. Click on the 3 dots. The pop-up window shows you numeric, comma, dot, and so on and so forth. Now, ideally, under normal conditions, we work with strings and numeric. String variables and numeric. String is when you have to type in, like their words you're capturing. But if you have used a questionnaire where you've assigned, let me say 1 equals male, 2 equals female, it is good practice to choose numeric because you're going to capture those data numerically. So that's that on that. Now, I want my ID to be numeric because it's going to be a number 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, and so on for the respondent. Now, the width is how long the type is. So normally, ideally, 8 is okay, except you have very long, depending on the length of what you're entering, but 8 is okay. And then decimals. Since I want my ID to be 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 for the respondent, I don't need the decimal. So all you have to do is remove it. Click on it. You see an arrow. One is pointing down, the other one is going up. Just remove it. Take it to 0 because we don't need decimal there. What about gender? I want 1 for male, 1 for female. I don't need 1 point anything for gender, so you remove it. Education. Now I'm capturing my education as 1 for high school, 2 for this, 3 for that. I don't need it, so I can remove it. But before we start removing all that, let's create other variables. So come back to that after data imputation. Now, I want us to impute another data here. After education, impute a variable called height. Height. And enter it. Why? What did I enter? It's telling me. here impute a variable called height. Okay. Then on the 5th row, impute a variable called, let me say, weight, like this. So now we have 5 rows: ID, gender, education, height, and weight. Now we go back to my decimals. Ideally, someone's height could be, let me say in centimeters, could be something like 175 point something. Someone's weight could be, let me say, 75 kilograms point something. So it is okay for us to reserve decimal notifications here for these two variables. Now, conventionally, decimals are more applicable to quantitative or continuous variables. So we can retain this one. So now I can label this as height, let me say in centimeters. I can say weight in, let me say, should I say kilogram anyhow, or pounds, anyhow you want. Weight in pounds, yeah, something like this. So the first one here, the ID, I can just say serial number of respondent. Like this. So now we've covered name, type, weight, decimals, label. Now, the next one I want to consider, which is very, very important, is values. 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 Now, for the ID, what does value mean? For the ID, I don't need any values for it. But for the gender, I want to be able to differentiate between my males and females. So if you click on this cell and you click on the 3 dots here, it opens up a page, value labels. Now, I want to capture my data like this. 1 should represent males. So you can put 1 in the value, and then the label becomes what? Male. Then you click add. Then I go back again. I want 2 to represent female. Then I click add. 1 for male, 2 for female. That's how come you see this when data is being captured. After that, I'm just going to click on OK. See that? Good. Now, education. Let's assume we have 3 levels of education. Let's assume, it's an assumption, it's a hypothetical data we are generating. Let's say 1 is high school, and let's say 2 is BSc, and let's say 3 is a postgraduate. Let's call it PGD. So I want to capture my education as 1 for those who attended high school. I add it. 2 for those who actually had a first degree, let's call it BSc. And 3 for those who have masters, PhD and above. So we call it a PGD. Well, so when you add it, you have this. But for the height and the weight, we don't need any values for it. So you leave it. Now, the most important thing we need to consider now is we'll consider these missing variables later, but for now, let's just leave that. Now, the most important thing here now is our measure. The alignment is just how you want this to appear. If you want if you click on it, if you click left or right, it just where your entries are indicated. Now, if you go to measure, you can see unknown, 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 unknown. And this is where the fundamental knowledge of measurement skills comes in. Now, earlier we said gender falls under nominal. It is a category. And 1 here does not mean males are first, and 2 does not mean females are greater than males because they are having 2. No, it's just a category. It is a grouping. So I'm going to come here. My ID is actually a scale because it's just number, but we're not going to analyze the ID, so you can just leave it. Now, the gender is nominal because it's just a category. What about levels of education? It's a grouping. People with BSc are considered to be more educated than those with high school, and those with postgraduate education levels are considered to be. So there's a natural hierarchy. So that is what? Ordinal. So you set it to be ordinal. And then your height is a scale variable. Your weight is also a scale variable. Now, SPSS does not give us that stress of trying to differentiate if it's interval or if it's ratio. So we just choose scale, and we choose scale, and we enter it. This column is very, very important. If you don't choose the right measurement scale, you will be limited by the analysis you run. So you would always have to come back to indicate the right measurement scale before you can proceed. So please pay attention. So now we have everything sorted out for our 5 rows. Let's go to the data view and then input some hypothetical data, and we'll play with the data. So let's go. When you open the data view, you can see from variable view, you have this. When you click on the data view, can you see you have your ID, your gender, your education. If this is not showing where you can open it, just like in Excel. So now let's enter some data. So let's say respondent number 1.
Hello, please, can you go back again? Please, can you go back again?
Go back to
a little bit before coming to this page.
The variable view here. Are you okay?
Okay, yes, you can continue.
Okay. So now we can go to the data view here. So we want to impute, please you impute as I impute. This data is purely hypothetical. So let's assume respondent number 1 is a male. And because I had coded my data to be 1 for male, 2 for female, I'm going to input 1. Can you see that as soon as I imputed 1 changed to what? Male. Now let's assume this person has the second level of education. Let's just put 2. I can't remember what that was. Okay, so 2 is BSc. And let's just assume this person is, let me say, 67, wherever in height. And then what about the weight? Let's assume he is 128 pounds. Assumption. Now we go to number 2. Let's say this is 2. Let's say this person is number 2. It changes to female. And let's say this person is highly educated, number 3, postgraduate. And let's say this person has a height of 70 and a weight of, let's say, 124 pounds. You enter like this. Please enter. We're going to run some basic analysis with this hypothetical data before we actually import a data file. So we can do that. 3, let me say 1, let me say 1, let me say 62, let me say 136, let's say 4, let's enter up to 10 data points so we can do something little with it. Let me say 1 again.
Hello, sir. My own is not changing. It's just showing the number I'm entering. The one is not changing to
Exactly.
gender.
It's not
Not
changing.
changing to
okay.
gender, just like your
It's
own.
all right. Don't
Everything
worry.
is not
Don't worry.
changing.
I'll show you. Don't worry. if it's not changing,
at the top.
if it's not changing,
Yeah.
go to the top. Can you see there's like an arrow pointing down? Then one is going to say A and 1. Can you see this arrow?
Yes, you can see it.
Yeah. Now click on it.
Okay, it's changing now.
Did it change? So you can always
Yes,
toggle
yes, yes.
between them. One,
Changing now.
this. So it depends on where the one that has been activated. You see it now, right?
Yeah, changing now. Yes, yes.
Yeah, so that's it. Any other question? Okay, if there's no question, we continue with the data imputation. So let's say we have respondent number 5. Remember, these are questionnaires. In a real world, when you collect your questionnaire on the paper questionnaire, the traditional way where you administer, this one here is questionnaire number 1. So when you actually pick the questionnaire up in those days, what we do is we name it 1 at the top. Now, why you do this is because when there is an error in data imputation, because you had written 1 on top of the first questionnaire you pick, you can always go back to that questionnaire that you've labeled 1 and correct the error in the data imputation. So in the real world, this 1 is respondent number 1, which corresponds to questionnaire number 1. So normally you just write 1 at the top of that questionnaire. Then you enter its content. Yeah. So the next one is, let's say we have 2. Let's do this quickly. Education, let's say we have 3, 2. So we have 70, 153. So we have 68, 144. So we have respondent number 6 to level of education is 1, 68, 78, yeah. So we have 116, question number 7. So we have 1, 3, 66, 122, question number 8, 2, 2, 70. So we have 143, question number 9. We're gonna stop very soon. So we have 2, 3. We have 66, 151. So we have let's see, 10, 1, 2, 65, 151. So this is how you enter data. Now I'm gonna leave out, I'm gonna put 11, 12, but I'm gonna leave out these 2 gender on purpose to show something when we run analysis. So I'm gonna leave this here. So we enter the other ones. Let's say 80. Oh no. This is 3. This is 160. Let's say, let me just make it I make it 89, 118. So the last one, let's stop here. The last one, let's say 2, let's say 60, let me see, 140. Yeah. So this is how you manually enter data. And it's exhausting in those days, when we used to do this. Exhausting. You have to pick, if you have 1,000 questionnaires, imagine doing this. I remember you're going to have a lot of variables here. Many variables, plenty of them here. Now, this is very easy. Anyone can do this. Assuming you have a situation where, we've all seen this kind of questions where somebody will say, tick as many as applicable. This is very important. How do you capture? Let's say someone says, okay, before then, let's go back to variable view. Leave the data view. Click on variable view. If you're on the variable view, let's assume we want to add a variable called level of agreement to the time of this SPSS training. So let's say we've administered a questionnaire to all of us and we say, on a scale of 1 to 5, where 1 equals strongly disagree, 2 is disagree, 3 is neutral, 4 is agree, and 5 is strongly agree. Indicate your level of agreement to 3 p.m. as a starting time for this training. Let's assume we want to add that variable to this data set. So I'm going to call it time agreement, AGG. And I'm going to label it level. I like making it short. The shorter, the better. Agreement. Agreement to SPSS time. So it's so easy to add variable in SPSS. Now, we mentioned that we want to indicate that 1 is that you strongly disagree to this time. So disagree, this is how you capture that in your you add it. Now 2, you disagree. 3, you're just there. You can call it neutral. It's okay, maybe anything goes. So you can call it neutral. Add it. 4, you can call it agree. 5, strongly agree. This is how you capture it. So after that, I just add it. Okay. So when you have Likert scale data in your questionnaire, this is how you capture it in SPSS manually. So that's that. Now I need to set, I don't need decimals because I don't need decimals for that because 1 is agree. I don't need 1.00 something to show that. Now, who can tell me what would be the measurement scale for this variable?
Ordinal.
Ordinal, thank you very much. It's an ordinal level of measurement. I'm just trying to show us how we can capture the various types of data in SPSS. Now, a very common type of data that is also being used is what we call the multiple choice. Now, multiple choice is where you tell someone, let's ask a question, like let's say, indicate your decisions, tick as many as applicable, your reasons for joining this SPSS training. Tick as many as applicable. So when you ask a question like this, as many as possible, how do you capture that in SPSS? Okay, I think I have let's use this hypothetical example so that we can understand this very well. Oh, no. I don't want to save. If I minimize this, just save it. Okay, I can just save it anywhere because it's my data. If I minimize this and then I go to, I think I named the file called SPSS. Okay, I can't find that file now, but let me just show you how you do that. Just show you how you do that. Okay. Let's assume we have, let's call this multiple choice question. Multiple choice question. And the label is choose as many as applicable. So you're going to tick your level of agreement. Now, how you code this kind of responses? Let's assume we are asking people, tick as many as applicable, your reasons for joining this meeting. Tick as many as applicable, your reasons for joining this meeting. And then under that, you have one, to run data analysis. Two, you have something like, let me say, to gain knowledge. Then you have three, let me say, to teach others. I'm just making this up, to teach others. Then four, let's say you have others. That's other reasons. Remember, the question is, tick as many as applicable, your reasons for joining this training section. And you've asked someone to tick as many as possible. And the first option you've given someone is to run data analysis. The second one is to gain knowledge. The third one is to teach others. And then, let me say number four, others. Assuming I responded to this questionnaire and I have ticked option number 2 and I have ticked option number 4, meaning the only two applicable to me are number 2, to gain knowledge, and then number 4, others, wherever that could be. How do we capture that in SPSS? Now, all you have to do is go to your values. So if I tick a particular indicator, I'll call it 1 and label it yes. Then, if I did not tick a particular indicator, I'm going to call it 0. Then it's going to be elsewhere, meaning 1 for yes and 0 elsewhere. Like this. So meaning if the person ticked 1, or whichever one the person tick, whenever you're entering the data, you put what? 1. But if that particular indicator is not ticked, you choose what? 0. So if I went back to my data view, for instance, and then let's assume I, Philip, am respondent number 1. And then among the 4 indicators given to me to indicate why I have attended this, I've clicked option number 2 and 4. So when I'm entering this data, here, you will have to label each indicator separately in the variable view, like this. This has to be broken down into 4 different indicators. This particular question, it has to be broken down into 4 indicators. This is the general format to capture this indicator. Now, because I have 4, I'm going to come down here. Let's say I have reason 1. Run analysis. That's my first reason. All I have to do is sometimes you can just come here. Okay, let's do it manually so that we learn. So I can say 1 for yes, add 0 else where, like this. That's reason 1. Reason 2. Remember, I'm still under the same indicator. I come here, My second reason was gain knowledge. Gain knowledge. Knowledge. This is the same thing. 1 for yes, 1 for if someone chooses that, then you say 0 elsewhere. Then I add. Then reason 3, R3. Let me say teach others. I can just teach others. And I can say 1 for choosing that option. That's yes. And then 0 elsewhere. Like this. Oh, what did I do? Did I mention? Okay. 0 elsewhere. Oh, yeah, like this. Now reason 4. R4. So others. I call it others. So you're gonna have 1 for yes. 0 elsewhere. So this is how you capture multiple response indicators in SPSS. If you've asked someone to tick as many as applicable, so for each of those indicators under that construct, you're going to form something like this for all of them. In this case, R1 stands for to run data analysis, R2 stands for to gain knowledge, R3 stands for to teach others, and R4 stands for other reasons. So what I define here technically wouldn't appear here. This would be in what we call code book. Yeah, technically this would not appear here. So only those indicators will be shown here. So after that, you come here. So let's say, as I agreed, I didn't agree to this, I put 0. And then we don't want decimal. So we go back to the variable view, remove decimals for all this, because the decimal doesn't make sense there. So we remove the decimals, we remove the decimals, we remove the decimals. You know? So let's go back to the variable view.
Hello, in the column, in the variable column, how does your column change? You can see changes in your column. In the variables.
I don't get you, please. I don't get you clearly. Can you
This
ask
variable,
again?
the column
Yeah.
section is changing. You're having 8, 8, 12 as against our own 8, 8.
This one?
No, the column,
width?
column.
No,
After mixing, the column.
These are columns. I don't get it.
No,
This is
no.
No, the
You mean after the mixing?
After the mixing,
Various
yes.
column.
values missing columns.
values missing.
Yes, 8 column.
Is
Yes.
in the data
Yes.
view or
In variable
here.
view.
oh here.
Here.
Oh,
You're having 12.
okay.
Our own is 8 or 2.
8 or 2.
It's okay. It's the column width. So don't worry about that. Don't worry about. I mentioned leave the missing value and column. Those ones are not necessary. Don't worry about them for now. Okay. It's not going to affect anything. Yeah. Thank you. Okay. So we go back to the data view, and then I did indicated that if I was respondent number 1 and I have chosen option number 2 as to gain knowledge. So when I get here, I'm going to put 1 when I'm coding this 1. But because I didn't take this 0, I chose this. So 1. This is how you enter multiple response analysis. So let's say respondent number 2, tick as many as applicable. This person, respondent number 2, chose this, can choose everything. Okay. Some people can tick everything. So in that case, everything will be 1, 1, all true. So one can say 0 to this and tick every other thing. Yep, like this. So this is how you capture multiple response analysis in SPSS. So you have to capture each indicator and then you assign 0 to not ticking that and then 1 for ticking that. I think in the next 3 minutes, we'll go for a short break before we come back and do some descriptive analysis. So far, so good. We've learned the basics of capturing data in SPSS. First of all, we said we have a representative ID or serial number to capture the respondent or the questionnaire number you are on. And I did mention that if you are using paper questionnaire, this is a conventional practice. This one, you write it on top of the questionnaire, because after data imputation and there's an error, let's say there is no height here or weight, and you don't know which questionnaire that is. So when you put 1 here, you must tally it with the respondent number you are entering. That is the importance of this ID or serial number. Then you capture the gender. We talked about measurement scales. We said we have 4 types of measurement scales. The nominal, which has to do with grouping and categories, such as your gender, your color, and so on and so forth. Grouping of cars. Then we talked about the ordinal, which has a natural hierarchy, and the hierarchies actually make sense, like level of education, level of development, like low income, high income, and so on and so forth. Then we said that we have the interval and then the ratio scale. But luckily for us, SPSS combines both the interval and the ratio scales into what is called scale. So I will go for a 10 minutes break. When we come back, we'll do some exploratory data analysis. See you in 10 minutes. Thank you.